Number to call if you want to join the conversation, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Glad to have you weigh in on this whole topic of moral relativism and what Anthony Kennedy is talking about, the hazards, the dangers of moral relativism. He's regretting that now, and yet he was probably the chief proponent of moral relativism in the Lawrence v. Texas ruling, and then talking about the trend line in the presidential campaign. Now, all the trend lines moving strongly toward Governor Romney. You know, I'm guessing this 52-45 differential in the early voting is probably going to be reflected in the final tally. That's kind of what I'm sensing right now. We're looking at 52-45, 53-46, somewhere in that neighborhood. So people that are hoping for a change on November 6th, I think there's a good chance they're going to get it. Nobody can go to sleep. Nobody can stay home. Everybody's got to drag their friends to the polls. Everybody's got to stay engaged, stay involved. But I think we're at a point where there's reason for cautious optimism. And again, we can't take anything for granted. I'm not saying that it's in the bag. I'm not saying that it's a certain deal. I'm not saying anything of the sort. Because it's not over until the fat lady sings, and she hadn't started singing yet, so it's time to make sure we do our part and get out to the polls. Now, Governor Romney, speaking of the Supreme Court, has said, look, I want judges that will overturn Roe v. Wade. He says, I think the Supreme Court ought to overturn Roe v. Wade, and I'm going to look for originalist judges that will overturn Roe v. Wade. Essentially, that's what he said. Now, here is Norm Coleman. We just have the sound bite, don't have the video bite, but here is Norm Coleman, who's a former senator from Minnesota. That's where I got off in the weeds when I started thinking about Minnesota. But here's Norm Coleman, who is a Romney surrogate, and he's talking to a Jewish organization about the issue of Roe v. Wade and abortion, and here's what he had to say.
First of all, for those who care, you have to decide what's important right now, what's going to impact you right now. The reality is choice is an issue. For a lot of people, an important issue. President Bush was president 8 years. Roe v. Wade wasn't reversed. We had two Supreme Court choice picks. Roe v. Wade wasn't reversed. It's not going to be reversed. Now we have fights over the edges on that: parental notification, partial birth abortion, etc.
So there's Norm Coleman speaking on behalf of Romney. Says, "Hey, don't worry about it." Says the Jewish, "Don't worry about it. Roe v. Wade's not going to be reversed. Settle your mind, settle down, chill out. Don't worry about it. Not going to happen. Not going to happen under Romney's watch." So I don't know why he's out there saying this kind of stuff, because Romney has said repeatedly, look, originalist judges are going to be important to me, judges who know that Roe v. Wade was a constitutionally suspect ruling and will overturn it. Now, and so Norm Coleman's basically running up the white flag of surrender. He's capitulated. He's given up. Never going to happen. And don't forget the homosexual lobby. They had a ruling in 1986, Bowers v. Hardwick, that said, yes, states can criminalize homosexual behavior. It's just fine. There's no constitutional impediment to that. They didn't give up. They kept fighting. In 2003, they got Lawrence v. Texas. It overturned the Bowers ruling of 1986 just 17 years later. We're sitting here. We've been waiting 39 years to do something about Roe v. Wade, and here's Norm Coleman surrendering. And, when this reporter from Talking Points Memo contacted me for reaction, I sent her a link to this piece by Erwin Chemerinsky. He is the dean and professor of law at UC Irvine School of Law. And he said, look, the stakes in this election are enormous because Romney has expressly said he wants to see Roe v. Wade overturned. And so he's saying, look, we've got 4 votes right now on the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. If Romney gets a pro-life nominee, Roe v. Wade is toast. It's history. It's in the archives. It's in the dumpster. It's going to get overturned. So you got Edwin Chemerinsky out there wringing his hands. We have got to defeat Romney if we want to keep abortion in place. If we want to keep Roe v. Wade in place, we have got to defeat Mitt Romney. So he's a long ways from thinking it's in the bag that Roe v. Wade is going to be upheld. So somebody needs to get a copy of that to Norm Coleman. Number to call, 888-589-8840. Now, speaking of this Hurricane Sandy, Charles Krauthammer had an interesting observation. This is clip 1, Rob, and it has to do with the fact that President Obama had a picture of himself taken in the Situation Room. taken in the Situation Room, where he's monitoring what's happening with Hurricane Sandy. He's got his team there gathered around the table. They got the big screen TV in the back. Looks like something out of Air Force One. So he's there looking presidential, looking like he's in command. He's got this thing under control. He's being the guy that's getting the job done. And this is the same Situation Room where people watched the ambassador die. And probably Barack Obama watched the ambassador die right in that very same room. And so people want to know, look, here's President Obama in the Situation Room with Hurricane Sandy. Where is the picture of President Obama dealing with Benghazi? We want to see a picture of President Obama in the Situation Room handling this Benghazi crisis. So we know that President Obama knows where the Situation Room is, had his picture taken there. Maybe what he's doing is maybe he's in the Situation Room telling the Red Cross to stand down. Maybe that's what he's doing there in the Situation Room. So anyway, Charles Krauthammer had this observation to make about this photo op that the president staged to try to create this impression that he's in charge. Let's listen.
But it's a little odd that he shows up in the briefing room where he hasn't shown up in the briefing room for about, a month and a half on Libya or for anything else for that matter. And then you get the photo ops of him in the Situation Room deploying, I guess, the utility crews who will restore power all over America. Whereas you would think he might want to use the Situation Room and have convened high-level people during the 9 hours our people were under attack in Benghazi. It's hard to look at this playing the president, playing the commander-in-chief on what's a natural disaster that really doesn't require a lot leadership from the White House. It's up to the governors mostly. The White House and the president release money. That's about all that they do. And he's really good at releasing money and pretend that it isn't about politics. He wants to use this to show himself in command. And I think he might actually be the beneficiary of the fact that all national attention is drawn away for 3 days. Romney clearly had the momentum. It had slowed down, but it was still heading in his direction. It's not clear what happens when the country sort of wakes up out of this in 3 days and restarts attention on the campaign, whether that momentum will be gone or not. I mean, that's an open question.
So Charles Krauthammer said, look, it's just a photo op. President's in there in the Situation Room, taking command of utility crews. No sign of him in Situation Room with regard to Benghazi when he had access to AC-130s, gunships, rapid deployment forces, and didn't do a thing, didn't lift a finger to help. By the way, there's a story, I'll see if I can dig it up in the stack. General Carter Ham was the head of AFRICOM. This is the African Command. So he's the guy that was in charge of pulling the trigger on any kind of military response to Benghazi. And apparently what happened is he was made aware, as everybody would have been in the chain of command, about this crisis in Libya, about this attack on the consulate. He knew that the consulate, our ambassador, were under assault, and he was given an order to stand down. He was told don't do anything, and he said, forget that noise. We've got military resources. We've got Americans in harm's way. I'm sending our people in there. And this word got back to apparently to President Obama, who's commander-in-chief, and Carter Ham was relieved of his command immediately. His second in command came and under orders, I assume, from the President of the United States, said, you are now relieved of your command, because Carter Ham was going to go in there and he was going to kick some tail to protect our citizens. And President Obama said, no, you're not. In fact, I'm relieving you of duty because you're so intent on doing your sworn duty. Let's go to Tricia in Onalaska, Texas. Tricia, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Number, by the way, is 888-589-8840. Tricia, what's on your mind?
Well, you brought up many, many issues, and number one, I want to understand how the Electoral College can come in and change the popular vote. I think that's what's happened in the past, and I could be wrong. I've never really understood how that worked.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is my concern about all the voter fraud, the things that they're finding out. And, especially having heard on the previous program where Obama's campaign is getting funding from foreign countries.
Yeah.
And
well, in fact, all right, Tricia, listen, I appreciate that. In fact, President Obama got a donation from Osama bin Laden. Got two of them, as a matter of fact. Some guy over in London gave an address for Abbottabad. I mean, that was the address he put in there put in some kind of fictitious street number, some kind of fictitious town, maybe Jihad USA or something like that, and donated money to the Obama campaign in the name as if he were Osama bin Laden. And because the Obama campaign, and this was from Europe, this was like from London, this is an illegal foreign donation, and he did it just to test the system. No security precautions in place, and so this foreign donation from Osama bin Laden to Barack Obama went right through. So, ladies and gentlemen, right now as you and I are sitting here, Barack Obama has in his campaign coffers, in his war chest, 2 donations from Osama bin Laden. And their security procedures are so lax and so low that they didn't get flagged. And so it's pretty clear they're facilitating these illegal foreign donations. Now, with regard to the Electoral College, the way it works, Tricia, is every state has a certain number of electoral votes. Every state. And it's the total number of their representatives and senators. Add those together. Everybody's got 2 senators. If you've got 4 congressmen, then you have 6 electoral votes. And the winner, the popular winner of that state gets all 6 of those electoral votes. So if Governor Romney wins in a state like Mississippi, which has 6 electoral votes, then he gets all 6 of those electoral votes, and they go into his tally. Now, California and New York have a whole lot of electoral votes. But if a president wins in New York, he gets all of the electoral votes in New York. Now, he may get so many votes in New York or California that he winds up with a greater popular total, more total votes. But remember, it's not based on total votes. It's based on electoral votes, state by state, and that's good. That protects the smaller states like the New Hampshires and the Nevadas. Candidates have to campaign in those states. They can't afford to give up those electoral votes. If it was just based on popular vote, everyone would go to New York and California and forget about everybody else. But fortunately, it's not that way. Every state gets electoral votes, and that's a good thing. Focal Point AFR Talk.
American Family Radio, AFR Talk.